Here is a bunch of technology from sport, and what I want to do here is I want to evaluate its impact. Now, I've just chosen a sort of a random selection of softwares and clothing and time equipment, etc. What we're going to do here, first of all, is we're going to take different groupings and look at what's positive and negative. So, considering all that technology, for the performer, for the team, for the coach, is this good or bad? Is this positive? And of course, it's both by definition. So, we get to have better skill learning in sport because we've got more accuracy of information. People can learn to move more accurately, more efficiently. We get better up arrow match review. Think about VO and video playback and GPS tracking data. We get better match review. We get better safety. And think about contact sports, and even combat sports become safer, perhaps not the safest, but as a result. And what we can get by that is we can get down arrow, we can get fewer injuries, or certainly we can help to prevent or minimize the impact of injuries. We also get an up arrow, an increase in adapted sport. And when I talk about adapted sport, we are making reference here to sports that could be considered Paralympic or disability focused, for example. Now, there are some negatives. Some people would identify some or all of these as negatives. We might get a loss of tradition. It might feel like now it's like a space race to be the best rather than kind of based on some idea of natural talent. Coaches and performance might become over reliant. Have you ever found yourself thinking, oh, I've got to get a bit fitter or do more exercise or whatever, and your first thought is like, what have I got to buy, or what technology do I need? That happens to me all the time. Now then, you can argue that it down arrow, it reduces the authenticity of the sport. In other words, is it the case that the person with the best technology wins, as I mentioned before? It's also exclusive, so only those that can afford get it. That might mean that it's obviously more beneficial to kind of real popular sports, for example. We can also argue, and I've touched on this already, that it unlevels the playing field. Let me put that in air quotes. So again, only those who have can the playing field. Let me put that in there. That didn't work out very well, did it? And then finally, performers feel invincible. So I'm going to put sort of invincibility. If you know everything about your performance and you're getting constant feedback and you think, okay, well, I can't get injured because we're doing this sort of preventative measure and that, maybe that leads to invincibility, and performers then might take risks as a result of that. Now, let's take to another group in our sort of sporting cycle. What about sponsors? Why do they like or why do they dislike technology in sport? Well, first of all, they love dynamic advertising. And what I mean by this is advertising that moves. Of course, that could be video based on TV. It could be an electronic, kind of very high quality sort of board around a rugby pitch or something like that. Also, the sponsor gets lots of analytics. Are the adverts working? You get that feedback, and all businesses work like that. You also reach the world. That sounds like a very sort of aspirational thing to say. But the sponsor, because of technology, especially sort of viewing technology, get to reach a much broader audience than perhaps in previous times. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind as negative for the sponsors. The price up arrows. Price goes up because, of course, there's more competition for this sponsorship. And therefore, it requires a lot more funding. Okay, so the actual expense of being a sports sponsor goes up because you've got this now more high-tech version of sport as a result. What about if we think about other people? What about if we start to think about a sporting event or a sporting team? Is technology positive or negative in that scenario? Let's go through the same point of view. If we look at things like VAR or TMO, I'm going to put in here, there's meant to be a slash there, TMO is television match official in rugby. They up arrow increase fairness. That's the theory of those kind of video supporting the referees. Also, you get up arrow excitement, because this is now more of a technologically based sort of viewing experience. Spectators sort of get more entertainment, more excitement, and therefore maybe are willing to pay more. That's obviously good for the sport. What about also we might get up arrow better performance enhancing drug detection. So the fact that we've got better technology in testing to find drugs cheats, that of course helps the sport and the teams. But there are some negatives. Technology can change the flow of sport, and I'll come back to this idea over here. VAR, TMO, they can stop play for long periods of time, and that can be problematic. Now, 2 groups to go. Stick with me, folks, we're very nearly there. I want to talk to you now about primary spectators. Now remember, primary spectators are those in the stadium, at the event, at the match. What's good and bad about technology for them? Well, first of all, they get paperless tickets. Now that will not seem very impressive to you, I would imagine, because that's something you're very used to. But from someone myself who still finds it unusual that whether it's my airplane ticket, my train ticket, any ticket is on my phone rather than in my hand on a printed bit of paper, obviously that's a change. You also get the idea, again, of a cashless stadium. So, paying with either plastic or with one's phone. Also, and again, you might not find this high technology, but also match day radios. Okay, you can actually hear commentary in your ear as you're actually at an event and watching. However, technology slows events down. Okay, so you mentioned this already with VAR, TMO, for example, slows events down. And also for the primary spectator, because you're not watching it through the TV, and that's often where the technology is sort of exhibited. As a result of that, people in the stadium can have a lack of certainty, like actually what's going on here. You don't necessarily get to know what that is. But of course, the secondary spectators, these are people watching from home, of course, their experience is going to be slightly different, right? Because they are probably far more in the know than the people, the primary spectators in the stadium. So, first of all, they get great, so up arrow, more range of angles to actually view something. We also get the idea of interactive timelines. I'm sure you guys use these. I was actually using one last night. I was watching a bit of Champions League football last night. Who was on? It was Arsenal on last night, and I was using a bit of an interactive timeline, which was nice. But we also need to think about the various methods. So many more methods. So think about TV. Think about streaming. All TV stream now. Think about, you might even get to see something on Red Button, for example. I'm not sure that's still a thing, but anyway, I've written it down now. Anyway, the problem, and we've looked at this for home viewing, it becomes really expensive. So there we go. An evaluation for those different groups of the impact of technology. Hope that helps.